This is realm of possibilities is what I wanted to name my presentation or my whatever. So when I sent an email to Ravi, I realized, so I enjoyed making the presentation thoroughly because it gave me a lot of time to think about what, like, all of the 4 blocks and also see how it impacted my work. So I sent him a really long email saying it's been an amazing experience until I forgot I had to talk about it. So this is very interesting. Okay, I'm also very nervous like everybody else. So I've used a lot of my journey. I've seen it a lot through colors because I work in a children's center, and so I use a lot of colors in my work. So which is why I decided to scribble something on my phone, and I wanted to use this. Also, Realm of Possibility, I also realized much later on, is also a book. I don't remember the name of the author, I'll let you know, but the book, it's a collection of narratives by young people who talk about their experience in school through their voices. So it's a collection of monologues. So which is why I really like this, this topic or this. Okay, so before I begin and I tell you how it has impacted or how my work or my perspective has changed, I'd like to talk a bit about my context. So I work in a neurodevelopmental center, and I work in a very like structured power hierarchy. So the second floor has a group of doctors, the first floor is the rehab team, and then there is me. So my mental health team is me. So I started off, when I started working last April, and I started with a blank slate. So because I work with a team of doctors, there were a lot of value-based, first of all, they follow the medical model. There were a lot of value-based differences where they didn't put, like, for them mental health was something, either they would like poke fun at it, they would look at it as something, so if this case or this child could give us more money, it was something that, so it was more like, I get monetary benefit from this, hence this has value, hence I will bring it in, or that's how it was sort of looked at. A lot of the work that I was doing is advocacy based work. So because the concept of mental health came into my system when I joined, it was a lot of like picking up like anything that came about, or like just trying to plant seeds everywhere. So my work is very, very haphazard and very unstructured. And so one of the things, or one thing that I want to focus on today is I do a lot of these sessions where a family comes in only once. So they'd come in from very far, or they'd come in like from different districts, and they'd come in just for 2.5 hour session, and they just go back. So sometimes it's also, you get like value-based differences where you have only one session to make it count, so you have to like whatever milk it and like etc. etc. I did not have any work experience, which is like for me a huge. So where narrative practices came in, also brought in more color into my work, is I'm going to talk about 4 small stories. So one of the things that narrative practices helped me with is that it just smashed like expert opinion. Despite my system sort of saying that, hey, listen, you are the expert, or even families coming in and saying, listen, you are the expert, you know best. There was one such family that came in where she was, the mother sort of came to me and she said, this is what I have been told to do by your boss, that is the doctor who heads the system, as well as other people who the child works with. The child has dyslexia, and the child was also coming to me because of anxiety and anger. So one of the things that that one conversation that sort of I witnessed a slight change was when I said, okay, I may be the expert, but you know your child. And that's sort of where there were 2 opposing things. It sort of brought, like, I'm not saying it smashed a bit of the power, like you could see it slowly crumbling. So it sort of brought a middle ground where, like, okay, like, let's meet midway and let's see what's possible. The family infinitely had, like, there was much more agency that I saw. And and also the child was more likely to say anything within the room, because me as a psychologist or everybody else here, we hope to create spaces where people can speak. But what I saw happening was that, yes, the space between, or like this invisible barrier that exists between me and the family, the space sort of became where the family also sort of started creating spaces. So that space creating process translated as well into where the family was also like, okay, let me sort of hear my child out, because it's a collaborative process. So the space creation got translated. Expert opinion went away and I started having more conversations, which became very, very, like, so that shift I saw started happening. Okay, so language. We've had so many conversations about language. So for me, yeah, so the things that we spoke about within this room, or the facilitators have spoken about using the language that like not just the, like, say Hindi, English, Tamil or whatever, but also words. I realized that when I started using the words, it allowed for more humor. So there was this, there's this 13 or 14-year-old child who comes to me, and he had a history of ADHD, and he's coming to me because he's struggling with writing long answers. So he loves drawing. He thoroughly enjoys it. He can sit for 4 hours and draw. So I'm like, okay, so how do you feel at the end of a 4-hour drawing? And he said, I feel greatness. And the way he said it, you can instantly sense like a relaxed, like sort of like yes. And when I said, okay, what do you get out of greatness? So what does that get out of it? He said, it gets patience. And so when you see these like differences that take place because of the language that you use, and that sort of, it translated into, like, again, the family saying, like, it was obviously, when you see two opposing stories happening, and that's when, like, the family is like, yeah. Also, another thing that I realized is shifting chairs, or like turning in the direction. Another thing that we spoke about in supervision is the importance of interrupting. I never realized how important or how, like, valuable interrupting would be when you stop and say, like, hey, I didn't catch what you said, or like, also because I have to, maybe my hearing or whatever, but like that sort of helped create, it sort of, how do I say it? It helped both the family catch what I was trying to get them to catch, or whatever it is. So that sort of started happening when specifically with language. Of course, it allowed for a lot of humor and hope. Yeah. Okay. So when a family comes to me, the conversation that typically happens in my clinic usually goes like this, where, like, the psychologist speaks to the father, the mother, the child, and that's pretty much it. But a little couple of changes that I was able to bring is speaking to the mother and speaking to the all of them and bringing in all the voices helped the conversation flow in all directions. It was not only just me and one and one and one. So this happened where, like, there was this one family who came in from the US, and they had come because their small child who had gadget control problems. So one of the things that we did was I spoke to the child, I spoke to the mother, I spoke to the father. We decided to do a couple of scheduling, a couple of those changes. So when a lot of families come to me where we work with home-based changes. The thing about home-based changes is, despite that we or my clinic thinks that it's meant for the child to get better, there's more than one person in that household who has to make those changes. So sort of addressing all the participants in that room helped all of them sort of, like, or I don't know if it's quality of life or whatever it is, that became better, but conversation flowed that way, which was what was that sort of change that I realized that benefited them more, or like it made it better for them. I don't know about the words, but so okay. I think I've ranted so much about this in my supervision sessions. So collective identity is one thing that made a huge difference in my workspace. This is not so much with the families that I work with, but the people I work with, like my co-workers and colleagues and whatnot. One of the things that I started doing is, I started having conversations with them where I went back to the basics. So I'm like, hey, how did you get into the healthcare sector? Or like, how is it? So like, if there were value differences, the core, I got the belief that the core was still the same. Like we both still stemmed from like, I want to help people or I want to do this. So I went back to the basics and started having a lot of conversations of like, so why speech therapy? Like why physiotherapy? And that, it warmed me more to them. Second, it created spaces for, again, bringing about a middle ground, where they said, okay, so it brought about a lot more collaborative work. But for me, the standout for my conversation was, this thing was conversation with non-therapist staff. So I decided to, I think during lunch break or something, speak to somebody who was called the therapist assistant. So we call her Akka or elder sister in Tamil in the organization. And she was just talking about how she's worked in the organization for about 3-4 years, and she told me about how she's seen a change in a lot of these children, and she had no clue about what autism or ADHD or any of these like terms we very easily threw around as therapists. She had no clue about these terms. But when she realized the change or like the impact work can make, she started talking about them. So in the waiting room, she started talking about them to other parents. And any parent who had an anxiety or something, she just started saying, no, it'll be okay, it's fine, I've seen it happen before and it's okay. So she also started becoming like an invisible advocate. Like, so she'd say, no, so counseling is not that bad, they're not going to do these like dangerous, horrible things that you've heard of. So, so that started happening, and she also started advocating for things outside of the organization, where she would say, my neighbor's child is not meeting the criteria, or I can see there's something off. So I will sort of talk to them and bring them and sort of have a conversation with them. So this sort of invisible advocacy that I didn't like, or maybe I'm not using again the term right, but this sort of was like my, it sort of like stood out for me a lot. So this is my last slide. So at the end of this, for me, these are the things that it brought about. For my system, it brought about more compliance rates, so my boss was very happy. It brought about so much more, you have so much space to be creative and like do things, and like, I don't know, like I can tell you so many stories of creativity. Also, self-reflection is something that I had sort of, after I finished my master's or something, there was sort of like it was like a lull phase. There was like nothing. And then when any time, and I've told Ravi this also in supervision, saying because he's like, okay, but how are you feeling now? So that sort of, it sort of kick-started again, and led to this entire presentation. It broke down stigma from within. So like, yes, the people I meet are the families who come to me. Yes, it helped with the stigma, but I didn't picture a sort of like something growing from the inside and sort of bringing that out. So yeah, it helped me ask a lot more questions both within the session and also like in general Family seeing things in a different light has been like the biggest takeaway. And more weirdness is something one of my children told me. She was like, I can be weird here and I like it. So that is something that I wanted to take back, because it for me, like, it's just that, like, I want to be weird and I'm not being weird anywhere else, and I like being weird here, and like it's okay to be weird. So that is it.